Hi, everyone. Here I am with Jamie Elizabeth Thompson. Jamie, I'm really excited to get to have you here and have this conversation. We were just chatting off recording, and so many of the women in my life that are friends of mine that are in community with me are actually students or have been students in Jamie's work. And so it feels particularly like a delight to get to have you here.
Yes, thanks for having me on, Emily. I love so many of those uh, sisters that have taken many of my courses, and I love that you are friends with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always start these conversations with the question of what embodiment means to you.
Embodiment to me is the difference between the mental idea of aspiration, like what we want to be, and what we actually are in this moment. So I have a distinction of aspiration and embodiment because so much work is about aspiration. It's like, creating your vision and what do you want to be? And, you can dream it, you can become it. And for me, embodiment is really the grounding of that into the being and the person that you walk around as every day. So embodiment is like, it's the truth. Like there just is no, you can't add fluff to embodiment. It just is. It's just what's here. It's real. It's what's happening. It's the emanation that comes out of you. And embodiment doesn't really care what you want to be. It really just is what you are. And I love it because I've always been a seeker of the truth. And there's spiritual paths and personal development work that's about feeling good and like feeling better and trauma management. And then there's paths of spiritual work and development that is about seeking the truth. And I've always been interested in seeking the truth. And so embodiment to me is the greatest reflector of truth.
I love that. The greatest reflector of truth. Totally. And how you can't fluff embodiment. I love how simply you put it, but it's so true. You can't really fake your way into being like, oh, I'm embodied. And yeah, it just is.
Well, and sometimes you see that, like you see, and I love talking about embodiment with you on an embodiment podcast because there is a lot of pretending in the embodiment industry. Like there's a lot of what I would call like the distinction between like a real peach tree that's like got roots in the ground and branches in the sky, and like it's like growing these delicious peaches and you can like eat one and you're like, oh yeah, that's so good, versus like peach flavoring that's like in like, a sports drink that, you buy at Walmart, right? And you're like, oh yeah, it kind of resembles a peach, but it's like, you can feel it. Like you can tell the difference between like the real peach tree and like flavoring. And so, I really want to encourage both practitioners in this industry and facilitators in this industry, and also women who are desiring to become more embodied, to really tune into their body, to feel like what is real and what is not.
Yeah. Totally. And because there is a resonance of no matter someone's own personal story of how embodied or not they are, I think each of us can uniquely connect into if we're thinking of working with somebody or looking at someone and to feel into ourselves of, are they in their truth or are they really embodied, or do we resonate? Are we on a similar resonance? And that's important information to have. Yeah. So much goodness that you just shared there. So thank you. I'd like to just have you share a little bit about, so Jamie, you're a holistic sex and intimacy coach. And have you just start the conversation further of kind of your own journey and how you got into the work you're doing now.
Yes. So yes, I'm a holistic sex and intimacy coach, and I specifically enjoy working with groups of women. and finding their true embodiment and reconnecting with the truth of who they are through the pathway of sex, intimacy, their desire, their a feminine attractor field. And so that's kind of why I say holistic sex and intimacy is it really is like, this is a pathway into that whole exploration of really the truth of who we are and embodying that in this life. So, you know, I have this kind of mantra in life that I believe that we choose to be born into the family of origin that might create the most like difficult challenge for us to crawl our way out of to be who we are actually meant to be. So I grew up in a very repressed traditional Christian household, and there was very little like true self-expression, especially in the world of pleasure or embodiment or sexuality. You know, the kind of the programming that I grew up with was like, you know, you can play when the work is done, but like the work is never done. Yeah. And it's that very like pleasure isn't even something, beauty, pleasure, like these aren't even things that are on the radar of my family. You know, incredible entrepreneurs, but that was not on their radar. And so it's like, that was like the contained box that I had this experience of growing up in. Now I always had an incredible amount of energy, like a deep access to the current of life force, the creational current of life force that flows through human bodies. Like I was always very connected to that, and very connected to my sexuality. Like I started masturbating when I was 5, you know, so it's like just had this like really a lot of energy and a lot of connection to it, but grew up in this like box of like repression and dogma about religion and shame. And so the way that I kicked my way out of that box was initially I became a dancer. So I was an exotic entertainer in Las Vegas, and I would fly back and forth from California, where I lived at the time. And in that experience, I reclaimed my sexuality. Like in that experience, I kind of grew up embodied. Like I had something where I was always like connected to my body in the way that I grew up. But my sexuality wasn't connected in my embodiment, right? Like I feel like there's different sort of facets of embodiment, like areas where we might be embodied or not, right? And so that was a part of my journey where I just like went through the whole sexual liberation piece, and sensuality became like this incredible awakening for me. And then after that, I had this awareness that I was now in my sensuality and my sexuality, and I was liberated, and I had this whole like, I'm liberated now, and you see a lot of this energy on the internet, right? And I was incredibly protected. I'd opened my lower energy centers and was receiving more of my energy, but my heart was still closed. Yeah. In order to do what I did, my heart needed to be closed. Yeah. For me at that time, I was incredibly sensitive and was not connected to the level of sensitivity that I actually had. And so, post stripper chapter of the life was really about, reclaiming my heart and reconnecting my heart and my pussy, and like being more in the coherence of like these different energy centers in my system. And there was quite a bit of unraveling for me to do, of where it's like I had become sensually embodied, but it was a transaction and it was for someone else.
Mm.
And what I came to discover in this process with myself is that, well, in the strip club, it's very obviously a transaction. In many women's lives, they are experiencing something similar, where they are experiencing their erotic energy, their pleasure, their turn on, their sensuality as in some level, some kind of transaction, or something that's for someone else, or a performance that's for someone else. And so in that journey of really coming back into relationship with this incredibly powerful energy that I had like unleashed after growing up in the way that I grew up, it was really about containment, and it was about integrity, and it was about like creating the boundaries internally and externally in my life that would support this energy in continuing to grow and be nourished without spilling, or leaking, or being a performance that's for someone else, where ultimately I was ending up feeling empty and undernourished and confused. So there was a lot of undoing in this journey. And then really the last about 7 years of my life have really been about supporting other people on their own journey, like their own heroine's journey of erotic embodiment, what that is for them in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing some of that. So
Yeah.
much I could like dive into there, but I want to start with, because I totally get it and understand it. And I think it's a really valuable conversation of going a little deeper in how you shared of at that time you had to be protected, like protect your heart and needed to be protected there, right? You were opening yourself really sexually, and sounds like having fun, enjoying it, even though maybe there was, ultimately some ramification of feeling undernourished, like it's transactional. And yeah, like I guess to just track however, what comes up to you organically around, how did you start to notice that protection in your heart? How did that start to show up maybe in personal life? And that kind of starting to heal the merging of, heart and pussy and bringing that unification again.
Yeah. So for me, the heart closure, and so it just to kind of give a little bit of a context of how I hold this also in my work, is there, it's like if we imagine that there's an altar of the heart and an altar of the pussy, right? And there are some women who it's like they worship at the altar of the heart, like they're incredibly heart-centered and warm and open and generous, and often they'll fall more into like the good girl kind of archetype, right? Where there's like, it's like they might have patterns of feeling like they are like a doormat, or they overgive, or they self-sacrifice, right? And they really have this like incredibly open heart. They worship at the altar of the heart. And then there are other women, and this is I'm creating a binary, and there's obviously shades of gray in between. And there's other women who worship at the altar of the pussy, right? And it's like they are so deeply connected to their erotic life force, to their truth, to their power, to their sensuality and the power that has. And they worship at the altar of the pussy. And often for these women, which was more of my experience, there's a closure that happens in the immature kind of archetype of the seductress, right? There's a closure of the heart that happens. And it's like, I mean, for me, the way that I came back into connection with that was in relationship, realizing that I was not all the way there. Like I was still holding a part of me away that so that I wouldn't get my heart broken. Like, it's like I was still holding like the jewel of my innocent heart and like the tenderness of that away from my partner, out of fear that I might be rejected, or like truly out of fear of heartbreak. And so for me, it was actually a period of time that I call my heartbreak initiation, where I experienced a very deep heartbreak because I truly like gave someone my heart. Like the difference of like holding it away and being like, yes, here you go, here it is. And it was, it was too much for him. Like the intimacy was too much. And we'll see this in life. It's like when you really show up available for a relationship, sometimes the other person isn't actually available. And so that was that experience, right? And so I showed up available for maybe the first time ever, and he was not. And it was so important. It needed to happen this way, so that I would actually be able to feel all of the layers of pain and hurt and armoring that had covered that pain and hurt, and just unravel it. And in the process of unraveling all of these layers, I just made this decision to keep my heart open, no matter what.
Not an easy decision to come to.
Easy to come to aspirationally, but as we're speaking about like the embodiment, right? The truth of that is like, took like 3 months. I mean, not everybody has 3 months of their time. Like I was fortunately able to, like, I spent about 3 months in like a dark night of the soul where I almost didn't leave my house. Like I was in a very extreme level of opening and awakening and healing past trauma. Like, I mean, it was just like, it was just, what it took for it to actually like open all the way was an incredible amount of practice and dedication, like really a devotion to the very uncomfortable process, like it's like teeth and claws and snot and like shaking on your floor and like actually just letting yourself feel all the things.
Especially our like sweet, beautiful hearts. There's so much there, and to allow that breaking to really stay with that. It's very, I think, really courageous. And I like I said, is like easy, quote unquote, easy aspirational of like, I'm just going to keep my heart open. And like, even me saying that, I just kind of pop out of my heart, but to really be in your heart. And
so that was where like I really came back into connection with it. And that journey is what inspired my work with women. Like that journey is what had me be like, oh my God, like I was just shown something of like how to go through this process and like meet it, because there's this way that we can be so afraid of going there because we haven't had the right tools or the right guidance. And we've just been down there in the underworld alone and closed and like shivering in the dark. And that's most people's experience of like really feeling their pain, right? Is like not actually having what you need to really digest and move through. And so that's part of what inspired me to start working with women, because after this, I had a level of freedom that then the way that I held myself, the kind of men that I was also attracting and interacting. I work with a lot of women in their relationships with men, because that's where a lot of this stuff comes up. And that was like a really important shift in the kind of men that I attracted and the way I related with men.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I don't want to like put you on the spot too much, but if there's something that comes to you, I'm curious just for anyone who's listening to this. Um, I mean, I love how you said like part of it is we just haven't been taught the right tools or practices or have support, because we really need support in that level of work of really going into your heart and feeling the heartbreak. But is there any like suggestions that you would have, to offer to someone as a starting place if they're kind of feeling that discomfort or really being in their heart and being open yet, I think of it as like supported from below, like being able to receive the support of the pelvis. Yeah, if there's just something that's somewhat simple that comes to you to share, if this might be new or elusive to somebody so they can start to practice.
Absolutely. So if it's like, sometimes it's like when I speak about this, some people are like, oh my God, like that is what I need. And some people are like, oh, wow, that's really terrifying. Right. And so wherever you are is okay. And it's just different places in the journey. And I would say that the first thing is to develop a loving yet truthful. And I say like loving and truthful as like they can be kind of a polarity, because sometimes love can feel like just making yourself feel better. And sometimes truth can feel like an attack. So when I say love and truth, it's like developing a loving and truthful relationship with your body first, where there's a deep level of love and holding of yourself. And there's like a sword, there's a sword of truth that is willing to look at the things that might be challenging to look at. Because it's really in that creates the like courage to go down into the underworld. And I love how you said being supported from below, like being supported from below, being supported by the pelvis. Like, it's really like a courage that's like, wow, my life is not actually where I want it to be. Like if someone is willing to tell themselves that truth and look and say, my relationship is not fulfilling right now. And I, like in my case, I looked at and was like, wow, I am not allowing myself to be loved because I'm not showing him the places that I don't feel lovable. And because I'm not actually fully willing to see and feel in my body the places that I don't feel lovable, like, and to hold them and love them and welcome them home. So if someone is just new to this, like that would be the place that I would start, is like the gentle opening of holding loving truth with yourself, of looking and really seeing at some of these places that might be being repressed or rejected or overridden. And sometimes when women look at these places that are repressed and rejected and overridden, maybe they don't feel the altar of their heart as much. Maybe they more feel the altar of their pussy. Maybe they more feel the pelvis, the energy from below. That's like, whoa, that is a place. My pleasure is overridden. My Shakti and my connection to life force is actually being repressed, or I'm rejecting my desire, like my true authentic desire and pleasure, and like the willingness to communicate about that. Right. That's another place where, we might find some of these uncomfortable truths that we get to hold with love.
Yeah. Thank you for offering all of that. So like it brought tears. I got teary eyed, especially just hearing when you weren't willing to show the parts of you that you had felt like we're unlovable. And for all of us, like just connecting more to those parts or pieces of places in our being that we maybe feel are unlovable or that we have overridden, and doing that in that gentle, loving truth gaze is what a beautiful like practice and place for people to get curiously courageous, because it's not easy to say to yourself, like, I'm not fulfilled here, or I'm not happy with where my life is in this direction. But that is being able to identify and name that is the key to be able to shift into more of what is going to give us energy, what is going to give us, feeling fulfilled and feeling in our power. So I'd like to just segue a little bit and hear what you would have to share and offer for us, specifically because my work is really focused on women who feel insecure, feel ashamed in their body. And being that you are a holistic sex and intimacy coach, and sex and intimacy itself can bring up so much to someone who feels insecure, who feels ashamed in their body. There can be so much hiding, so much, talk about protection there. So I guess I'll start with a little bit more of a specific question, and you can from there go any direction that comes up. But, if someone's wanting to name, if they're wanting to be more like actual true intimacy and be in their truth in sex and their desire, and wanting to name what they want, what they need, but they don't feel confident or they don't feel, good in their skin, what, suggestions might you have to offer someone who is in a situation kind of like that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. So it's like you want to ask for a desire, or you want to share something that you want intimately with someone else, and you feel insecure or ashamed, and like you don't even know how to actually get to the place where you can speak it.
Yeah. And to put it maybe even a little, that's pretty specific, but even a little bit more specific is, let's say like you're sexually intimate, you're with your partner, and someone's not being fulfilled sexually, or they're not like, they don't like how them and their partner, they've been together for years, how they always do it, or they're just not really able to, they just keep catching themselves not speaking for what they need, for what they want, for,
Yeah. So, I believe that all issues with another person, especially that are recurring, are first an issue with self. So if there's consistently an issue with asking for what you want, or like there's consistently an issue with like not experiencing the pleasure or fulfillment that you want in, your intimate experience, then my invitation is to first look within. Like where, like, what is your relationship like with your own erotic life force? What is your relationship like with your sensuality and feeling good and enjoying being in your body? What is your relationship like with intimacy? Like, are you deeply close and in a trusting relationship with yourself? Can you communicate to yourself what you need? And when you do so, do you listen? And this is really like, I really like to take it out of the world of relationship with other and relationship with men initially, to really reconnect with the relationship with self. One of the frames, one of the teachings in my work is that the feminine creates the tone. The feminine sets the tone of the relationship, and then the masculine builds the frame and the architecture around the tone to support the tone and in connection with the tone. So in this way, women are like the unseen leaders, like the unseen invitation. It's like not the obvious leadership. It's like the leadership that's happening in the unseen world, because it's a signal that he's responding to. And so I like to bring it back internally and look at like, what is the tone that I am setting? What is the signal that I'm sending out? And how can I look at the like, what is my embodiment? I mean, really, this comes back to like, what is my embodiment? What am I emanating that he's responding to? And initially it's like coming back into relationship with like pleasure as being sacred and holy, and your body as being this incredible vessel. Like these are big journeys for many women in this lifetime. And it's really common to just be like, I'm unsatisfied in a relationship and I need to ask for what I need, without taking the first step, which is to like come back into relationship where you are in full acceptance and approval of your pleasure, of your desire, of your body. And that's a big journey.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's a journey that is better taken with other women who are dealing with the same things that you are, than with a man who's just trying to understand and serve you. Like, he's just like, how can I please you? And you're like, I can't even tell you because I don't know how to please myself yet. And so I really like to just bring it back initially into the connection with self. And sometimes, I really believe in women's work and men's work. And like, this is one of those things that is like meant to be done in a loving but truthful space with sisters.
Yeah.
And in that space, we can really come back to a deeper knowing and acceptance and love of our own bodies. And then from that place, the communication of what you want is like, it's just completely different. It's like there's the worthiness and the deservedness underneath. And there's actually also knowing what you want. How can you communicate what you want if you don't yet know it, because you haven't discovered it within yourself yet?
Totally. Yeah. I often say too, we can't know what we want until we first know how we feel. And I think to know how we feel, it's like coming inside. And I think that then helps identify asking what it is we want, what it is we need. I like how you said earlier too, it really hit me. Not only asking yourself or, connecting inside, what does your body need? What does your body want? But are you actually listening to the answer? I think that's huge, because it can be easy to kind of feel those little whispers, but be like, well, just push it, nudge it away for a little bit, or just be a little quieter. It can seem easy in the short term, but those little whispers just get louder, is my experience.
Well, and you'll notice that, like, if you're not listening to yourself, that likely people in your life aren't listening to you either.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like, it's like, it is your field, like, actually in that space of like a need or desire arises, and you receive it and you act upon it and you listen to it? Or is your field kind of like a lot of unmet needs and desires that then get projected onto other people in your life, especially romantic partner?
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I'm just going to jump to kind of one of the following closure questions, because that's where I'm coming at it. So I always like to ask, like, your number one main takeaway for someone who wants to live a more radically embodied life.
I love that this kind of note that we're on, of listening. I do feel like the mind and the body are they're a team, and sometimes they're a team that's not acting as a team. And often the thing that is needed to become more embodied is for the mind to start listening to the body and let the body call the plays, and then the mind carries that out and supports the body in carrying that out. But there's really coming back into this inner marriage between mind and body.
I love that. Yeah. And letting the team be a team, letting them come into communication and letting, in unison. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jamie. I feel like this was really rich. It's like, just, I feel like there's a lot in a short amount of time that you offered and gifted anyone who's listening. So I just really like feel so much appreciation in my heart for all that you shared. So how can someone find out more about your work and in the world?
Hmm. Yes. And I also just want to say thank you for being a space that really invites such depth of sharing to come through. I've done a lot of podcasts, and it doesn't always, my system doesn't always go so deep. And so I do feel like it reflects something of your embodiment and your ability to listen and be in connection. So I just also want to acknowledge you on your own podcast for that.
That's cute. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So where people can find me, is that the question?
Yeah. And if they are curious to, check out more of your work, where can they go?
Yeah. So where you can find me is I do hang out and put a lot of content out on both Instagram and Facebook, and I'll give you the links for that.
Perfect.
And I also, I think the best way to begin our relationship and journey together is by joining my email list, and I'll have that link here as well. And when someone joins my email list, I give them a free workshop on the feminine embodiment of allure. And allure is the organic, natural attractor field of the feminine when she's embodied. So I love talking about allure because it's this kind of unseen quality that everyone can feel, but you can't quite put your finger on.
Yeah.
And so I have a free workshop on embodying your allure. And
Wonderful.
if you sign up for my email list, and then I also have a Telegram community that is a really great way to start to get to know me and start to really immerse yourself in the teachings of this body of work. And it's just a little bit more of a private space than out on social media. And that Telegram group is incredibly affordable, and
Awesome.
a wonderful way to start to just nurturing community in this work.
Awesome. Great. What
Oh,
good
and one
offering.
other thing I almost forgot to say. So coming out in the spring, I am going to have a live container called Feminine Essence, which is about a lot of the work, the things that we talked about here today. So this live container will be about learning how to embody your sensuality, learning how to connect with what you need and desire, how to share that first energetically, and then how to communicate it. But first and foremost, coming back into relationship with the magnificent truth of who you are. So that's going to be an embodiment course. All kinds of women, I just want to say this, that are all shapes and sizes and ethnicities come through, and everyone gets to actually experience the way that each woman is uniquely and deliciously sexy and incredible and embodied. And it's a big part of this first step of really owning who we are. So that's the Feminine Essence Live container, and that will be coming out. You'll see info about that if you are on my email list or in the Telegram group.
Perfect. And I have all of Jamie's, all the links will be in the show notes. So make sure and go there. And yeah. Cool. What rich offerings. And I so love like that it's all in containers of women and from all different backgrounds, especially with that feminine essence work, because I believe 1000% that each woman has such a unique feminine essence. It's so beautiful to get to witness other women tapping into theirs. That I actually think it's that witnessing of each other, both the being witnessed and the witnessing, that accelerates our own personal healing work.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you said that in that way. That's exactly what happens.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, be sure to go check out Jamie's work, and thanks everyone for listening and tuning in. And I think my takeaway is just that, like, my intention for today, and I hope for anyone listening after listening to the episode, of to just continue to invite in more of that living truth connection, loving truth connection with yourself. All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everyone.